The following segment is brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Earlier this month on the show, I told you that it's time to be on the lookout for bad bills being pre-filed in Washington state. And as I said, my rationale was you can't wait until these bills get hearings and get momentum in Olympia. You really have to start speaking out about them early and often. And there are a couple bills that have now been pre-filed that I want to discuss because I think it shows really a frustrating lack of a lack of common sense priorities among the majority party in Olympia. And it's this continued effort to pass bills to make the lives of criminals easier, as opposed to making the lives of everyday citizens who are following the rules, following the laws, paying their taxes, as opposed to doing something to make our lives easier. The focus and the attention on making the lives of criminals easier is a strange thing to me. Now, I've said before we dive into these, that, I think if you make a mistake in your life and you end up incarcerated or in prison, the system ought to function in a way that sets you up to be in a better position and get on a better path once you are out of prison, because the vast majority of people who go to prison will get out someday. And so, it's not as if I'm not one of those lock them up and throw away the key. I'm not one of those people. I understand that reducing recidivism is very important, and making sure that felons can find a place to live, can find a job, etc. But that being said, I think that Democrats in Washington state have gone too far time and time again in focusing on the needs of criminals as opposed to the needs of everyone else in the population. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. One of those is House Bill 1024. What it would do is a couple things. It would, so if you're incarcerated and in prison, you can work to make some money. Now, one of the things that money can go to is helping to offset the cost of your incarceration. So, for instance, if a court determines at sentencing that the offender has the means to pay for the cost of their own incarceration, the court can order that they do so. It's like, you're the one who got in trouble. You're the one who committed a burglary or whatever it was. And if you can pay for the cost of your own incarceration, why should the taxpayers have to bear that burden? Like, I'm sorry, you're going to pay the $50 a day or whatever it is. Well, this bill would eliminate that. Even if you're behind bars, incarcerated, working a prison job, none of that money would go to offsetting the cost of your incarceration, and it would allow the inmate to keep more of that money. It would also mandate that prisoners who are working get paid at least the state minimum wage. So again, you're working to make the lives of criminals easier behind bars. You're putting that burden on the backs of the taxpayers. So as opposed to these people who committed a crime, who are in prison by their own choices, as opposed to them trying to work off the cost of that incarceration, trying to offset the cost of that incarceration. No, we have state lawmakers who say, the taxpayers who are minding their own business, who are working hard, who are paying their taxes, they'll take care of that for you. Don't worry. You be in prison, you just focus on doing whatever people in prison do. Don't worry about the taxpayers. They'll be fine. It's a weird priority for me. Now, there's another bill that was pre-filed that I think indirectly helps criminals. So this is a bill that would end qualified immunity in Washington state for members of law enforcement. So a police officer could be personally sued for an action they take against an individual citizen, if that action is determined not to be in line with proper protocols and training, etc. Now, I think that there are some instances where if you have an officer who acts egregiously, I understand sort of the desire to go after that officer civilly, but you also have to understand the chilling effect that can have on law enforcement. When you, as an officer, personally make a decision in a moment of frenzy, in a moment where your life might be in danger or the lives of someone else might be in danger. And if you make the wrong decision in that moment, you could be financially bankrupt. You could have everything you've worked for, everything your family has, be taken away from you. If you think for 1 second that officers won't completely eliminate proactive efforts in policing, then you're fooling yourself. Why would you as an officer go out on a limb? Why would you proactively put yourself in situations investigating possible crimes if you know that any decision you make could mean financial ruin? So you're going to have a lot of criminals who are going to get away with a lot of things because police aren't doing work proactively. Look, again, I don't think police officers should be above the law. I don't think anyone thinks police officers should be above the law. But it is a difficult job they undertake with complex rules and regulations surrounding it. And those of us who don't do the job, we have no idea the stress involved in split-second decisions. Now, there's one more bill. I don't think it's been pre-filed yet, but I know that it's been floated, and it's been floated by our friend Senator Joe Wynn, who we've had on the show before. I'll have to invite him back on to talk about this, but it's another one of these things where it's like, what about the people who are following the rules? So this would end low-level traffic stops for things like a broken tail light or expired tabs, where it's not an immediate, imminent public safety danger. The argument being that there's a disproportionate impact on low-income people and people of color. And it gets people entangled in this criminal legal system when maybe they didn't have the money to fix a broken taillight, or they didn't have the money to re-up their tabs. And again, I don't think that you have to throw the book at everyone who has an expired tab or everyone who has a broken tail light. But also, again, I go back to law-abiding citizens who are following rules. There's a lot of people who pay to renew the tabs and do so even though it presents a huge financial burden. The state of Washington has repeatedly rejected demands of voters for $35 car tabs to make them more affordable for everyone. And the state and King County, they just keep raising the cost of new car tabs. And then you're going to say, we're going to make car tabs really, really expensive, but we don't want police pulling over people who don't renew their car tabs because car tabs are too expensive. Like, what sense does that make in the world? So these are just a few of the bills that I'm watching because I think it's really messed up priorities, and I would like to see the majority party in Olympia, the Democrats, do something for once to help folks who are working hard. Do something for once to help folks who are following all the rules and following all the laws. Give us a break. Instead of continually trying to make life easier on people who don't follow the rules. The preceding segment was brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org.